Okay, so this is the CASS Foundations Forum call. We're going to have two talks today. Sorry, I'm Dan Katz from Corsa. We're going to have two talks today. Leah Silen from NumFOCUS and Todd Gamblin from HPSF. And I maybe just got the order wrong. Or did I get the order right? I don't know. We'll see. I'm also going to have to leave shortly after the talks end. And so then Eddie, also from Corsa, is going to take over if there are questions that anybody wants to ask or any discussion. And I'm also going to mute because it's going to be noisy in here with people leading this workshop. So whoever wants to go first, please share and go ahead.
Sure, I can go since Leah nominated me. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, okay, I'm Todd Gamblin. I'm the general chair for the governing board of the High Performance Software Foundation, which we kicked off in May of last year. And the motivation for HPSF is really that there's a lot of investment in open source software for supercomputers. And HPSF was sort of started in the wake of ECP, which invested a lot of money in a software stack, including programming models, tools, math libraries, applications, and so on. And Europe and Japan are just starting to spin up their own exascale efforts. And there's a lot of leverage with the AI boom in the industry. We figured that since there had been a lot of work over the past decade or so, building portable software for HPC, especially accelerated portable software that leverages GPUs, that we could leverage the investments that folks had made in the HPC space for a broader audience, and that we could get some of these packages more broadly used by industry and by others in the HPC community. So we really wanted a home for those sorts of projects. And the foundation is really focused on lowering barriers, helping developers, making sure that the development of these sorts of projects can continue. We are a neutral hub, like I think every foundation is trying to be. That honestly has probably been the main thing cited by projects that draws them to joining a foundation. It's ones that want to collaborate more broadly. They want to make it easier for folks to collaborate, and they want to not be associated with any one organization that could potentially go away, lose funding, or if there's a problem with one place, there's no home for the project. And to some extent, I think for most of the projects that joined HPSF, their funding situation hasn't really changed. But just the fact that they are associated with LF and Linux Foundation, which HPSF is part of, has helped lessen the perception that they are associated with one organization, or that they might change what they're doing for one particular collaborator. It's enabled organizations to join projects that I think otherwise wouldn't have, or might not have made as big of an investment if they didn't think that all of the IP, all of the trademark and everything for the project is open. Like I said, we're supporting projects that advance portable software for diverse hardware. We're trying to increase adoption. It's one of our main goals. We're aiding community growth and enabling development efforts. And then the software itself lowers barriers to productive use of HPC systems. In HPSF so far, we have software for build and deployment, including SPAC, E4S, Apptainer, which was already in Linux Foundation, but decided to join, and Charlie Cloud, software for development and sustainment. So we have COCOS, which is a portability layer, Amrex, which is also a sort of a portability layer, Kalinos, which is a portable solver library, VizCores, which is essentially sort of the GPU version of VTK, and WarpX, which is actually a physics application, and then finally HPC Toolkit. And we've had two projects join. One of them is approved, one of them is in the process since we started HPSF. So one of them, the latest one is Chapel. So the Chapel programming language is now under HPSF, contributed by HPE. And then environment modules. So the one, not LMOD, but the one at CEA in France. It's sort of a revival of the original environment modules tool. And I'll talk a little bit about those later. We have lots of members with different levels, and we've got some major ones, AWS and HPE, along with Sandia and Lawrence Livermore are the premier members. And then we have a number of general members as well. ARM has recently joined, and so that was great to have another hardware vendor join under as a general member. I think one of the things that we want to do is leverage the fact that we have these major vendors in HPSF to figure out what they need to promote this stuff and to have our software working well on their platforms. Many of the projects in HPSF already collaborate with vendors, but I think we can. We're working to formalize that and to bring them in closer to the foundation as we bootstrap. Ulick also joined, so that's one of our along with CEA. We now have 2 European members. I guess you can count ARM as a European member as well, but a little less academic than CEA and Ulick. And Ulick joined, I think because they're interested in contributing some projects, but also they wanted to, they support this notion of having a neutral place for collaboration in kind of the same way that CEA has. We invite anyone in the world to join HPSF. I don't think I want to spend too much time on this for this forum, since really I think the interest here was in what software projects are joining. And so far under HPSF, our main focus has been on bootstrapping. So we started less than a year ago, and the things that we have done so far are set up a governance structure. So we have a governing board in place. The governing board consists of 1 rep from each of the premier members. So it's like 50% premier, and then there's 25% from the generals and 25% from the TAC. So we have representation. We have probably more representation from the general members and from the technical advisory board on the governing board than most Linux Foundation projects. The TAC is sort of the beating heart of HPSF. We have TAC meetings every couple of weeks. What we've been focused on mostly in the TAC is really level setting what it means to be an HPSF project. And we've set up a project lifecycle. So we have sort of 3 levels: sandbox, established, and core. And we've been working on the criteria and also sort of the onboarding process for those. We have run almost all of the founding projects through the TAC onboarding process. And that's been really useful because it makes people think about what practices should projects be doing, what should an established project look like, what should a core project look like, and we've had votes essentially for as kind of a formality, but also kind of really running the original projects through the process. And we were able to loop in chapel and environment modules to that process, and so I think we've been happy with how it's worked for new projects as well. We have working groups under HPSF. So far, the most active working group is the CI working group. We've also had a little bit of work on binary distribution, trying to work with vendors, particularly Intel, on getting sort of licenses to redistribute their components as binaries. That's been a little chaotic lately because there's been a lot of sort of changes at Intel, but we're sort of moving forward. And then we are trying to work with OpenSSF. We have to essentially develop a certification process for SALSA. And that's important to us because one of the goals with HPSF is to make this software stack easier to access. And so part of that is having binaries available for different platforms for all of the projects in HPSF. And so under this OpenSSF collaboration, we've had sort of both sides of our build farm, which one at the University of Oregon and one at Amazon, sort of spec out their criteria for why is your build farm secure, why is it working, and why can't someone compromise it. And we're going to work with OpenSSF on developing that into a SALSA certification process. We are organizing the first HPSF conference, which is happening at the beginning of May. I'll skip over the governance. These are the stages that we've developed. A sandbox project is really intended to be low overhead. It's supposed to be very easy to join at the sandbox level. Just indicates that a project wants to be in HPSF and is working towards best practices. And we want to lower the barrier of entry to HPSF so that we can start mentoring projects early. So that's why that's sort of an open level. Established projects, the real intent with this is to show that the project is using good development practices, and that these are projects that are major components of the high performance software ecosystem. They don't have to be multi-organizational projects. You can have an established project that has most of its developers at one organization, and it just has to have sort of a proven user base. And the core level is really, it's sort of our vision for what sustainability ought to look like, which is that the project has contributors from multiple organizations, so that if one goes away, the project will definitely continue to exist. And so far, SPAC is the only one of those, although others are working towards it. And this is sort of the progression that we envision for projects within HPSF. So yeah, we have these levels basically to signal project maturity, to show others which projects are far along, which projects should you consider adopting, and are at a level that's suitable for whatever production project you want to use them in. And we want to provide a growth path so that we can mentor these projects to be more sustainable. All right, and so as part of our onboarding process for projects in the TAC, essentially we have the projects make an application. So they basically create an issue in the HPSF TAC repo that provides evidence for criteria from different stages. And I guess, what, I'll share that for a second. Let me show an example of one of these. If I can pull it up in my browser over here. Here's Chapel's proposal. I'll share again. Let's see, share this. Let's go over here to Chapel. So they provide like the name of the project, a description of the project, some examples of like users of the project, why they're aligned with HPSF. So they write something up on that. Website, license, code of conduct, governance practices. And they need to have 2 sponsors from the TAC to join. A lot of sort of boilerplate questions like, where are you hosting source control? It needs to be on an open site like GitHub or GitLab that anyone can access. Dependencies in their licenses and so on. Release processes, software quality efforts, the leadership team, project members with commit access, decision-making process. We really want the projects to have governance spec'd out, what they think the maturity level of their project is, communication channels, and so on. And then we have them say, what do you want from HPSF? And they do this, and then they make a presentation to the TAC. And so I thought, since you were wondering, like, why are projects joining HPSF, that I would show in their own words why they are. Let me see over here. So here's Chapel. So they applied for established, they got established. They've been around for a while. They have a lot of users. They're mostly developed at HPE. And they applied to HPSF because they think it would improve the project's visibility. It would make it less of an HPE thing and more of a community thing. I think to some extent they're already doing that. They've done a lot of work towards that, but they did have to formalize something. So like they did not have formally specified governance. So as part of applying for HPSF, they spec that out. They put a document up so you can see now how Chapel is governed. And they're excited about working with the TAC on things like this. Again, yeah, they expect it to help address single vendor concerns to discourage potential users and collaborators. So essentially it makes them much more obviously not a thing that serves HPE's needs, and instead a thing that serves the community's needs. And then they hope to work with other HPC projects. So, testing, portability, performance, and so on. They have a lot of experience with that. They think they can help us. And then, they think for the core areas like security, some of the requirements that we have there, that they, things like the SALSA verification that we've been doing, and also CI, that they could make use of those things. So that's one. And then modules, I think they're similar. They applied at the established stage. The voting is still going on, but and I think this is an interesting project because it's not that big in terms of like the amount of code, but it's very widely used. And so it'll be interesting to see what the TAC says on the stage. And they also wanted to improve the visibility of their project, mainly to get more contributors, which makes sense because they've got sort of 1.5 developers at CEA working on this. And they wanted to work more on best practices for development and open up their project management to make people think that it is safe to contribute to this thing. I can really be a part of it. I can own part of it. and we can grow the project. So yeah, you can see like the neutrality is really a big part of this, and also just the visibility. I think those are the main reasons that folks are joining, and the collaboration with the other HPSF projects. So that's it. Yeah, it's just a summary of things I've said. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're just getting started. Join us as a Project Aura member, and join the TAC meetings. They are open bi-weekly Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. There's details at hpsf.io.
Okay, thanks very much, Todd. Let me ask you one question quickly, which I put in chat, but I'll just ask as well. And it's that when we Corsa talk to projects, we found some projects that were kind of very strongly against having a neutral home, and very strongly wanted to keep their home being a particular lab because they thought that identity was the thing that was important for them.
Yep.
And so I guess I was curious if you've seen that as well, and if you had any comments on it.
We've talked to some. I guess I feel like if that's the philosophy on the project, then maybe a foundation isn't for them. So we haven't really worked too hard to go and convince those folks. And I guess I'm thinking of a couple projects to join. I think if they think that their lab is the bigger name that they can capitalize on, and that helps their growth more, then I think that's good. I don't know that is the best long-term sustainability option, because I mean, anything can happen in the funding situation at the labs, right? So, and I think if the project is at risk of losing a key person at the lab, or losing key people, or if something happens to the organization, that does reduce people's faith in the project itself. I know, like, there are some projects, so I mean, MPitch kind of comes to mind, because they have sort of a different philosophy on how they should run their project, right? Like they view themselves as an upstream that vendors then work with as the downstream. And I don't know, it's a slightly different model than a community developed project. It seems like they want to continue to be sort of the authoritative upstream and have vendors be their main contributors. They don't prioritize, things like end user support as much. They want people to go through vendors and so on. So, maybe that is a good model for them. I'm not sure, but it's not exactly the model that we're trying to promote with HPSF. We're really trying to increase involvement, and I think this is one way to run a project. There's others.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, well, let's go on to Leah then, with NumFOCUS, and I'm going to apologize in advance, and I'm going to probably have to leave kind of midway through this, so I'll make Addie the host, so that the meeting should continue. So I guess, Todd, you may need to stop sharing so Leah can.
All right, give me 1 second here. Put it on slideshow view, and it's not letting me see that on the shared. So yeah, there we go. That's the right one.
Yeah, looks good.
All right. Okay. So I want to apologize because we've got several new programs and projects that we are setting up and working on right now. So I'm trying to incorporate those into these slides, and there are some additional slides I would love to add. So if that's okay, I would love to do that afterwards, because I think those would be, it would be very beneficial for everyone to have those. And again, sorry, I was waiting on a couple things to prepare this slide deck. So I'm going to mainly focus on our project services. And let me get started. So I'm Leah Silen. I'm the Executive Director of NumFOCUS. And NumFOCUS has been around since 2012. We were founded in 2012 by a group of project leaders. Many of them were project authors. So we are an organization that was created and founded by project leaders, and we're here for one reason, and that is to support open source scientific projects. So that is what we do. That's all we do, and that is 100% of our focus. Great. I'm for some reason this is not advancing to the next slide. Let's see. All right, great. Love technical problems. Okay, hold on. Let me just do this really quick. There we go. All right. So NumFOCUS is sustaining the open source projects and communities driving scientific discovery and innovation. That is again, that's what we're here for. And sustaining the projects, helping them to grow, making sure they are strong, making sure they have needs met, so the project communities themselves can focus on the code and the things that they need to do without having that operational overhead is our goal. And I also wanted to briefly touch on some new updates in NumFOCUS and what we're doing, especially in our governance. So NumFOCUS has we have been very intentional about making sure our projects that we sponsor that are under the NumFOCUS umbrella and part of our family have a say in governance, and not only have a say, but are very active in our governance. So we have created a dual model governance system where we have two groups. Our board is divided into two groups. We have an administration board that is focused on operations and legal compliance, risk, managing those types of things. And then we have a group of which many of them are from projects, our technical steering committee, which is focused on new project selection, which is focused on oversight of our infrastructure and security committees, our affiliated project selection committee. Their focus is 100% on the project side. And while the admin boards is also, it is making sure that we have the resources and capacity to meet those needs of our projects. So we're very excited about that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we're still on the sustaining slide. It sounded like maybe you were talking to a different slide, but I'm not sure.
No, I did
Oh,
not
okay.
create a slide for this,
Okay.
but I wanted to mention it on the sustaining slide because I think that is part of our philosophy on sustaining projects and sustaining the organization as well. All right, so moving from NumFOCUS governance to our project support services, we are currently supporting 61 projects, and we have an additional 80 something affiliated projects. But what we call our sponsored or member projects, those are projects that we fiscally sponsor that are under both our legal umbrella and our members of the NumFOCUS family. We have a very active project community, and these are projects that I'm describing services for, because I think most projects that are needing a home, needing a home to be able to provide these critical services, that's what you want to hear about. So I'm going to speak to those. And I've kind of divided our service areas into community and sustainability. Most of them, the majority of them, 4 of the 6 have a focus of both community growth and community strength, and also enduring project, ensuring that projects are resilient, they're sustainable, and that making sure projects are healthy. So our service areas, and I'm going to go into each one of these in detail in just a moment, are our financial services, project advocacy, fundraising, operations, marketing, and events. So these are all of the areas that are included in a project receives when they come on board. We have a comprehensive fiscal sponsorship program. NumFOCUS has takes on liability, complete project liability. We have insurance that takes care of that for projects. So again, we're wanting to take on all of those needs on the admin and operational side. Okay, starting with financial services, we offer a full suite of financial services. We take care of accounts payable and receivable, grant administration, and we also have our new project support portal where projects have a way of tracking all of their requests and communications with NumFOCUS staff. Finally, around our finance, we pay a lot of developers, and we have just keeping track of independent contractor requests, whether that's paying a developer globally or in the US, and whether that is paying someone at a government lab or agency, a academic institution, our industry. We want to make sure that we can do that. We want to make sure we get developers paid. So the project portal also has a knowledge base of all our services, so it's very useful for projects. Our grant administration, we provide oversight of all grants awarded through the submission stage, helping with drafting budgets. We have budget templates, making sure grants where projects are compliant with grant requirements, and also reporting management, letting projects know when reports are coming up, when they're due, making sure reports are matching, reports are in on time. It's a huge help to projects, and grantors also greatly appreciate that. Then again, back to accounts payable and receivable, all financial needs are covered. Invoicing with project credit cards, independent contractor agreements, again, global developer payments, and of course, reporting. Okay, project fundraising services. We're very excited to announce that late last year, we brought in our first staff member that is dedicated to project fundraising. So their goal is to make sure that projects have every need filled around fundraising. So we have many projects, so you can imagine this is a pretty heavy lift, but MK is doing a fantastic job. He helps projects create a funding strategy, and that can include grant exploration, cultivating partnerships, institutional outreach, understanding if what kind of funding model is going to work best. Is it a service agreement? Is it a grant or contractor agreement? What will work best? And then we manage that for the project. We work on grant identification. We're constantly informing projects of grants that are available and would fit well within the project's own individual mission, managing and taking part in donor outreach with projects, and making sure agreements are executed for their sponsorship, whatever that is, whether that is a sponsorship. We have membership options for projects. They can do consulting, trainings, workshops, whatever it may be. We're here to help with that. Project advocacy is huge. I feel like our whole staff are project advocates, but we do have a project advocate on staff, as well as a project advocate coordinator that's working with her. They are working with projects to implement best practices for long-term sustainability. So again, this is where we're working on that strengthening projects and ensuring that they're resilient. This includes full support with governance, developing governance, improving governance models, ensuring that that governance is not coming from one source. So all project leaders are not at one company, at one academic institution, or at one lab or government entity. We want to make sure there's a diverse group managing governance, and making decisions are very clearly laid out in their governance model. This includes community management. There's regular check-in meetings with our project advocacy team. Project updates. Our staff ensures projects they are informed of everything that the organization is doing by providing weekly updates to projects on events, on fundraising, on marketing, on where we are in managing and how fast we're turning around funding requests and needs. We try to be very transparent and make sure projects know what's going on the organizational side of NumFOCUS, so that we can serve them better. There's bi-monthly project staff meetings. These are great. Any the project leaders can join. All staff members are there, and we usually have several topics we go through and then open it up for questions also. Again, making sure we have a very strong connection between our staff and each of our projects. And then we also hold bi-monthly project collaboration meetings. These are opportunities for all NumFOCUS projects to be able to come together to decide if what they would like to collaborate on, and maybe just start whether it's brainstorming on ideas or understanding common challenges and what they can do to work together. Also, understanding possible collaborations on grants and funding opportunities. Events are very important to projects. This is both to help community building and to support that, but also to ensure that there's a user to contributor to maintainer pipeline, and starting with making sure users are educated and feel part of the community. Our events are a great forum for offering projects opportunities to share, instruct, inform, and promote their projects. They can hold sprints, do talks, tutorials, workshops, all of the NumFOCUS events. We have SciPy, we have PyData events. We have more events that we will be rolling out in the next year or two, and projects have access to all of these. Or our event team supports projects on their own events. We encourage projects to hold their own events, and our events team provides logistical support, can provide websites, registration portals, the RFP or CFP and review platforms. All of that is included in our events support team. And our last area is operations. I don't have a lot listed here because there's really too much to list, but we offer full operational infrastructure and legal support systems. So this these are the services that a project needs and may not be able to have or pay for on their own. So this is if they want to use Zoom or a communication platform, Slack or Zulip, or whatever it is that their project prefers. Making sure they have access. We have free password managers software that projects can use, offering them lots of free options, Google Workspaces. We can do domain transfers. Trademark registration is a huge thing that we can do. We like to get all our project trademarks transferred and registered to NumFOCUS. It is not a requirement for joining NumFOCUS. We find it very helpful for projects because it gives them that extra layer of legal support. We want to make sure there's not someone using their name. We spend a huge amount of time working with our global legal team, just making sure that project needs are met. Licensing questions are a very common reason we reach out, as well as trademark infringements. But we offer all projects free, no additional, we have a 10% administration or project service fee. We don't charge anything extra for these services. Making sure I'm not missing anything on our operational. I think that's most. Also just consulting with projects on, operational needs. Many projects come to us with different different types of need. Every project is unique. The way they have their governance set up, where their communities are located. All of our projects are global. We don't have, and most of them have contributors that are from around the world. We don't have a project that's all located even in one country. So it's helpful to have services and legal support and operational support that is that's also global. And I did want to mention, and I didn't create slides for these two, that we also have an infrastructure and security committee that serves projects. And these are part of our community leadership initiative. And this is bringing projects and other community members into NumFOCUS leadership positions. And these committees are, both of these are actually run by members of projects, and they are also part of our board governance structure. So they are officially created by the board. They open up applications for new members annually, some biannually. And these offer infrastructure is where projects, are ensured they have server space needs, those, of course, that are access HPC system, those leveraging GPUs, have everything they need around those that we want to make sure they have. We take care of and offers support with testing. All of those types of infrastructure needs are handled by this committee, again, that is made up of projects so that they can work together. And also many projects share some infrastructure. And we have found it to be a great way for projects to collaborate and come together in a way that we can support project infrastructure needs. Security is the exact same way. Our security team reviews and audits projects and ensures that they have, the security programs in place, that we're, evaluating projects and making sure risk are identified and addressed on all levels. And I just want to close with science thriving on openness, collaboration, and trust. And those are three values that are very important to NumFOCUS. And we also thrive on those same values. And additional questions, I've included our developer advocate, Arliss Collins, her contact information. So if anyone has additional questions on applying for fiscal sponsorship, the criteria we have, process for that, dates when applications are open, when we're accepting applications, that happens 4 times a year. So all of that information, a lot of it is on our website, but you can also feel free to reach out. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Leah. So I think now we have some time for us to do questions for both of the speakers. I want to get us started from one of the questions that we have received a lot from the projects that CORSA has been talking to. And the question for both the speakers, so maybe you could take turn, is what are the key factors that would help a project choose a foundation? So let's say if a project tells us foundations sound interesting, now help me understand which one do I join. Are there things that each of you could mention that might help a project that's listening to the recording help understand if they fit better with NumFOCUS or if they would fit better with HPSF?
Do you want to start, Leah?
Sure. Thanks, Todd. I would say that the most important thing is for them understanding their needs and why they're wanting to join, what they're looking for in a foundation or in a home, because there are differences. And I think, HPCF is a fantastic, we want to call it home or a place for projects. There are things that each foundation offers that are a bit different. And I think just really identifying what those key needs are, and then seeing how those needs are met at at different foundations they're looking for. Ask questions, talk to projects that are members, and find out what their experience has been like. Set up calls. We we are happy to always talk to projects to figure out if it's a good match. It's not always. Sometimes it is, it's just not always a good match. A project either doesn't meet the criteria, or it may just be that what they're looking for is not something that we offer, or it's not a good fit within the NumFOCUS community. But we may recommend another foundation or home that we think would fill their needs better.
Thanks, Leah. Todd?
Yeah, I mostly agree with Leah. I mean, I think you need to know what you want to get out of joining the foundation. And, I think if you don't have an idea of what that is, I'd say listen to the 2 presentations. And if the stuff we talked about sounds appealing, then, I think you could consider talking to some folks. I wouldn't rush into it. I also don't think that, I don't think every project needs to be in a foundation, right? Like, I think really, like, the motivation for these is to sustain the project in the long term and to provide it with a neutral home. And if you want to maintain complete control over the project, or if you want it to live at a single institution, or if you maybe don't want to broaden the user base, then I think it's maybe not time to consider going to a foundation. If you are trying to get some organization to contribute to your project and having trouble because they don't want to contribute to something that's not owned by them, or that's not or that's owned by just one org, then that might be a good time to consider it. Or if you're running into legal questions or things like that around how to broaden the reach of your project, I think that's a really good time to join the foundation, because they have very good help for the sort of, I don't know, non-programming aspects of building open source. So I think if your project gets, big enough or widely used enough or just, noticed enough to have any of those problems, then I think it's a good time to join a foundation. If not, or if you're just doing your thing, then I think it's fine not to do that.
So I was just going to say that Elaine has a question, but I think maybe we answered it. So the question she posted was, how does a project know when it is time to join a foundation? So I think we've kind of covered a lot of that, but if there are any additional things we want to add.
I guess I mean, so I can talk about my own project SPAC, which is in HPSF. For us, like, it was when we started having resources and directions that we wanted to go that were maybe not directly aligned with Lawrence Livermore, right? I mean, it's not that they weren't useful to Livermore, but the question is, like, should Livermore exclusively pay for those things? Should only Livermore developers work on those things? And probably the answer is no. And so we wanted to broaden the set of contributors and the set of people working on the project so that we could we could make other folks feel invested in SPAC. And I think that's something that we found a lot of other projects wanted to do, which is why we sort of banded together with them and started HPSF.
Yeah, we see definitely a similar pattern. Many projects come inquiring about, fiscal sponsorship because it's like they've outgrown their the entity that they were incubated under. So if a project was incubated in a corporate setting, it may be that now they have so many contributors that are outside of that corporation. The project is growing quickly. Maybe it didn't fit into the current business model, or it was being used a whole lot and the use has decreased, and it just makes sense for them to move to another home, or they're wanting to apply for funding and they feel like that can be accomplished much better if they were with an independent neutral organization. So that we see a lot of projects come over from the academic settings that were incubated there, in research areas in particular, or projects coming from corporate settings, and even projects on the government side at government labs. So that's a very common reason. Also, we have some projects, we have two types of fiscal sponsorship, and there may be a project that isn't real, didn't think they were ready, but they've applied for a grant and they need an entity to manage that funding. So we have a type of fiscal sponsorship that is specifically for that, a pre-approved grant model that is very useful for projects. They may even be a smaller project that wouldn't meet criteria to join, but again, they have this opportunity for grant, and we want to make sure projects are able to be funded, and especially if they have that grant has been awarded to them, we want to make sure they're able to accept it.
Thank you. So another question that I wanted to ask, again, based on conversations courses had with projects, is how important is affinity or relationship with other projects who may already be in the foundation? So example for one of the math libraries who said, hey, look, SciPy calls a lot of our routines there in NumFOCUS, but at the same time, and the other math libraries that are like us are thinking of joining HPSF. So which way should we go? And we said, we'll probably ask the foundation folks if other projects and your relationship with them has some bearing into the decision of which way you should go. What is your opinion on it?
Sorry, could you say the question one more time? I think I didn't it broke up a little bit.
If other projects, like for example, for this particular math libraries, they were like, oh, SciPy is part of NumFOCUS and they use a lot of our routines. But the other math libraries that are like us are planning to join HPSF. So now, should we consider that, our projects like us joining this, or should we consider more that which projects use our code? That's how we should decide which foundations to join. So we said we don't know that plays a big role into where your home should be. but that was sort of the question that I wanted to bring to the table.
It sort of depends on the project, right? I mean, there's nothing preventing projects under HPSF from collaborating with NumFOCUS projects. Like, to some extent, both of the foundations were set up to do the same thing, which is to open up the projects more. So there's not really any sort of increased exclusivity when joining a foundation. If you're doing it, you're trying to do the opposite. On the other hand, I mean, like, if you want to take part in, I don't know, the HPSF TAC and things like that, right? If you want to have a vote, control the direction of HPSF, then maybe it makes sense to join there and to try to steer the directions of the organization if it is something in line with the interests of your project. And, you know, if NumFOCUS is doing something interesting for that for projects, then, you know, maybe that makes sense. I don't know that. I mean, I don't. I'd say it's probably a fiscal decision, if anything. Like, if which organization is going to support the activities that you want to do, and do you want to have a voice in that? Because you're going to have more of a voice in that if you join a particular one foundation or the other.
I see.
Yeah, and I would also add what type of collaborations. So, you know, if that project, you know, is it a dependency situation, or is it just that are you wanting to collaborate with that project on events, on possible grant funding, on, you know, what ways? And, you know, look at that. You know, if we're talking about SciPy, for instance, if you've you know, talked to SciPy maintainers or contributors, folks in their governance, and you're wanting to do some projects and programs together, then okay, that might make sense to be at NumFOCUS. If you're not, if you're wanting to work more with, you know, other projects, you know, there's also just looking at that community aspect and where you feel like, you know, where it's a better fit, where you think funding may be easier to get. Like I said, if you're wanting to collaborate on funding initiatives, that's another reason it would be easier to be at the same org. But as Todd said, it doesn't, you know, because you're at one organization or another does not keep you, you know, this is open source. We're not completely, you know, we're not isolated or wanting to isolate anyone. So yeah, and there's yeah, and I would love to see some initiatives, Todd, where yeah, the orgs are actually working together. So I think that'd be great.
Awesome. So our understanding was that once you join a foundation, there is not a way for you to interact with the other one. But are there kinds of membership which are more like affiliate that, for example, if a project has joined HPSF, they could still be some level of a member for NumFOCUS and vice versa, or is that not an option at all? That's another question we get a lot. That is it a choice I'm making once and for all?
Projects have transferred out of one foundation and into another, and you know they've moved. It's just another trademark transfer, right? I mean, at some level, I don't think it's like a super final decision. I think it's one that you shouldn't make lightly because you know you are assigning some IP to an entity, and you should think about that. I don't think it's true that you can't like work with another foundation if you join one. Like, I mean, I've talked to Leah in the past about collaboration opportunities between NumFOCUS and HPSF, and I think there's still lots of opportunities. We're still bootstrapping HPSF, but we could scale up some kind of interaction with NumFOCUS, and I think that would be awesome. So, you know, there's really nothing preventing that from happening. There's nothing that says that one nonprofit can't collaborate with another.
Yeah, I very much, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I don't think someone should feel like because their legal entity is one or the other, that the project, as far as, you know, the project itself, contributors working with, I mean, we have people from lots of other projects that are participating, you know, with other NumFOCUS projects on events, different collaborative activities. So yeah, I don't think there's yeah, I just don't think it's that isolation is true. What is true is that you are part of that legal entity and you can't kind of go in between in between two, that would, I think would be just a legal and accounting nightmare for everyone. But there are definitely opportunities for engagement and involvement.
All right, well, thank you very much. I know we're kind of short on time. There's one last question in the chat, which is, do or can foundations facilitate CRADAs? Don't know if you wanted to add something, or if that's something we will just have to take up for another time because of we're up on time limit. But
I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I mean, I believe Linux Foundation has had standing CRADAs with certain government agencies for a while. I think there's a question of whether it makes sense. If most of the development is going to be done at like one organization, then why wouldn't you organize the CRADA with that organization? Because like if you go through the foundation, you are paying some overhead, and I don't know if you're making the most use of your money if you're just using it as a way to route the money. When you could just be doing it a different way, because there's always a ton of pre-work and negotiation and planning that goes along with the CRADA. Like I don't think the foundation really helps to eliminate that. But Leah might have way more experience with that because they do a lot of grants.
Yeah, we've never had it specifically called a CRADA, like this is what we're creating. But we have, we have development agreements with government labs and agencies. So I always am not quite sure how to answer that, because I'm like, well, we do, but it wasn't specifically called out as that. But we do have a lot of experience working with those and the different ways in which we have facilitated those. So would happy to address those independently, or talk to someone about the opportunities.
In our discussions with Livermore about CRADAs for some other open source projects, so we talked to them about like Flux. It wasn't really clear if CRADA was the right vehicle for open source work, or whether it was SPP or work for others. Because essentially, like at least in the arrangement that we were talking about with a company about getting some kind of best effort support in place for the project, in case they needed it. Right. And that's not really research, right? Or the sort of thing that you would do under a CRADA. It looks, and it's not really shared IP either, right? Like the IP is still in the Flux project, and the company would, they're not really developing any new IP under this agreement. They're getting support for an existing thing. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the type of collaboration you're talking about, or the type of support you're talking about, what vehicle you would use for. Yeah. I'm not sure CRADA is always the right thing for open source.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for taking out the time to answer our questions. We'll share the recording with the projects, and maybe we'll organize another one of this if we get more questions, and we can collect that from all of the CASS projects and others. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. Bye.